you'll have 3,000 experts in retail that you could go to Babson for, 4 years and not get. Yeah. It's insane. It was so cool. Very, very fun.
You decide on Columbia for law school. Walk us through the process because, I remember, was the movie Paper Chase?
Yeah.
It talked the feeling of Harvard Law School, and I had a few friends who went to Harvard Law School, and it's intense. And just memorizing everything isn't going to get you past all the grades and stuff like that. In some ways, like you said, okay, I'm incentivized because I see these people around me, they're making more money, so maybe I should become an attorney.
Yeah.
You go through that process. How was the Columbia experience? And then from there, clerking and then getting to a Supreme Court justice. Walk us through that journey.
So in law school was a shock because I really hadn't had to pay attention to learning anything in college. I had experience not once, but many times in college where my professor would say, "What grade do you want?" And that was always kind of an interesting challenge. Do I want to say an A+, but that seems a little greedy. And then, how do I balance? If it's all A's, that doesn't seem right. But, what do I want? I'd usually settle out A to A-, but I never worked. I mean, other than doing my thesis, I never worked in college. And then law school was work. And it was actually really engaging and interesting. The law wasn't. The process of the way I approached law school was, for whatever the topic was, and you'd get your big books and all your cases, if I couldn't get it down on one piece of paper, I hadn't done my job. But if I could get down on one piece of paper, that was it. And I'd see everybody trying to get to all the details versus, can you express this on a page? And if you can express this on a page, I didn't know it, but that turned out to be actually a great key to how you approach law school.
Yeah, I like that. There's a very famous physicist, Richard Feynman.
Yeah.
And he talks about, quantum mechanics is the most complicated thing that even I don't understand. But one of the things he always talked about, even Carl Sagan talked about, is like, if you can't explain it to a high schooler, you don't know what you're talking about. If it's all jargon and it's very complicated and it's a mess, and you're trying to act like you're smart because you have a lot of the jargon, you're speaking at people, you really don't know what you're talking about. And I love that whole concept that we have so much knowledge or so much information, but being able to distill it into a process that's easy to understand for anybody, I think is also an incredible leadership and business skill, right? Because they're not going to have all the same data. They're not going to look at the financial statements. Maybe the CFO does. They're not going to look at the raw data in inventory turns and all those details. But there still needs to be a cohesive, simple story that needs to be communicated out to everybody, and it speaks to them not at just a cerebral level, but like a core emotional level to be able to impact change.
Deep believer in, so every organization, or not every organization I've worked in has pretended that they care about simplicity. But there are two kinds of simplicity. There's a simplicity at the front end of not knowing anything, where you start saying everything's simple. And then there's a simplicity on the back end of going through all of the details and understanding the details. That simplicity has incredible value. The simplicity in front of, the simplicity that tries to avoid understanding all the trade-offs and the details is worthless. But that process is hugely important. And it's true in business, it's true in everything, I think. You really know that you understand something when you can express it simply. Last night, I was having a great time. This is off the topic, but it was fascinating to see it. When I became CEO of Home Depot in 2007, one of the first things I did was I invited Bernie Marcus, who is one of the founders of the company, to come back and speak to our store managers meeting, which is a big deal in a retailer. You get all your store managers. We had like 3,000 all together, store managers, district managers, all these people. They're all together in Las Vegas. And as a surprise, I bring Bernie back, and he was very disaffected from the company. Bring Bernie back, everybody, you know, they go crazy, grown men crying. It's a great scene. And for the next half hour, I hadn't fully appreciated it at the time because, you know, there was a lot going on, but he wheeled out a whiteboard. And if you took that half hour, you'd understand retail. You'd understand every core concept in retail, at least as expressed in a big box retailer, from Costco to Walmart to Home Depot to you name it. And watching it again last night was stunning. It was like, holy crap. That is, and it's a group. So the, you know, the great secret of Home Depot in a way is the store managers. This group of, you know, 3,000 people, 85% of them did not go to college. I mean, 85%, because no one graduates and says, what I want to do is I want to go work on a cement floor in retail for a while. That's my idea. Instead, you start because you're just looking for a job, and you start by shagging carts in the parking lot or as a part-time cashier or whatever it is, and then you work your way up and you become a store manager, and you do well, you're the most successful person in your family. But the ability, the ability to express that in half hour with that organization and you'll have 3,000 experts in retail that you could go to Babson for, you know, 4 years and not get. It's insane. It was so cool. Very, very fun.